Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode features a session from Winter Institute 2019 called How to Be a Highly Effective Bookseller, Manager, or Buyer.
Hi, everyone. We're going to start on time because it would be really embarrassing if this panel didn't start on time. Like, that would be the story everybody would tell. My name is Dach. I am with Changing Hands Bookstore. We have two locations, Phoenix and Tempe, Arizona, and we also have First Draft Book Bar, which is alcohol and coffee in our bookstore. So I am here to thank you all for coming. Thanks for your faith. We'll see how this ends up in 1 hour. And I want to thank Ingram, our lead sponsor, for the generous support of this conference. I want to remind everybody to set your phones to silent and to also know that this is being recorded. And lastly, please do the evaluations at the end because it was other evaluations that actually led to this session. There was a lot of requests for how not to get burned out in our industry. I can't promise you that at the end of this session you will never be burned out again. But I hope. So I probably about 8 years ago, I had my father was very ill, and I had to get last-minute calls and get on a plane and go back to New York at a moment's notice. And for the first time in my life, I had a panic attack when I was on the plane. And what was so fascinating to me is it was what I was walking into, which was very scary, but it also was all these notes about this event program I was trying to grow and all these things, and realizing that I felt like I was leaving things unfinished and I wasn't prepared. And I have a business partner who said to me, "Why do you care? You'll be dead. Like, if the plane crashes, don't worry about it." But I do worry about that stuff a lot. And so I came home and I just realized I needed to really figure out time management and planning and how to be more effective and how to be able at a moment's notice deal with a crisis and not have a panic attack. So what I do want to say, I actually hate disclaimers, and I always tell my staff not to say disclaimers, but I am not an expert. I did not go to college. I did not have an advanced degree in this. But I started going deep diving and doing a lot of research and reading a lot of articles and a lot of books and going to a lot of time management sessions. And the thing that kept nagging at me was I feel that so much of that information out there is so helpful, and I'm going to be sharing a lot with you what I learned from other people. But what I found is so much doesn't address retail. It doesn't address when you're working on a project and you get that call, which our store does a lot. You get that page that says help to the register and you have to go. And then how do you get back to what you're doing? So I really felt that's what was missing in so many sessions that I'd gone to and books that I read. And what I try to do is I develop tools that have made me more successful and have made me more effective. I can't promise that you will walk out of this session saying, wow, I just gained 10 extra hours in my week. I still say, just last week I said to somebody, God, if I just had 2 more hours every day, my life would be perfect. And full disclosure, I am really bad at waking up early. And usually every time management session I've ever gone to in my life is wake up 1 hour earlier. I can't do it. I can't do it. I think that's why I got into events in the first place, because they were at night. So the biggest thing is finding the time to plan. So whenever I've gone to a workshop for like professional crafters or artists on how to be successful, one of the more interesting things I've ever heard was you have to take your craft or your art and do it for 50% of your time. And 50% of your time you have to do the business of craft and art. You have to do the Etsy sites or your line sheets. And I don't think it's 50-50 with time management and planning and business. I probably think it's more like 15% of your time should be spent planning. But I think where so many people steer wrong is that they don't take the time to plan. They don't take the time to be strategic about how you're going to be about your week or your day and how to manage an interruption once it happens. So this was the quote that changed my life. I kept saying this quote over and over again, which is, for every minute of planning, you gain 10 minutes a day. So 10 minutes of planning a day gains you 1 hour and 40 minutes a day. A friend of mine did the math on this, and you actually get like 20 extra hours. No, you actually get 24 days a year extra if you do this math right, which is like a vacation, right? So I have not taken a vacation with all this extra time, but What I will say is that for every minute of planning that I've put into my life, I really have gained those 10 minutes. It's hard to find that minute, but when you have that extra time, it's absolutely amazing what you can accomplish. So who in this room thinks they're really good at multitasking? All the multitaskers are on this side of the room. That's awesome. So the thing about multitasking is that it's a fallacy. We actually can never multitask. You cannot do two things at once and have your attention on both things equally. All you do is you're fleeting from one activity to the other. You are turning off one mindset and turning on the other. And I have to show this picture. It's your safety message. It's your only safety message. But when you are texting and driving, you are not multitasking. You are fleeting between two things. That's your only safety message today. So when you are interrupted, if you are in the middle of a task, when you are interrupted, how long do you think it takes you to get back on task? An hour? 2 hours? 1 minute? So the truth is, science proves that it actually takes 25 minutes. So if you're in the middle of something and you get interrupted, it actually takes you 25 minutes to get back to where you were when you started. Now, a friend of mine talks about the tyranny of email, and she has actually said that she believes it takes 25 hours to get back on task, because you might be writing an email, you get interrupted, and you don't get back to that email to the following day, but you're thinking about it the whole time, which is part of that thing that we think we're multitasking, but it's actually capturing our attention away. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the tyranny of email. So the strategy, and again, what I'm going to do is offer a lot of strategies and a lot of tools. Some are going to appeal to you, some won't appeal to you. You have to find what fits for you, what works for best for you. So for me, time blocking has become my most successful tool. And time blocking is essentially making appointments with yourself for the work that you have to do. So this is just, I'm sure many of you work with calendars and you color code. One of the things that is so common among people who are less efficient are people who their meetings are in their calendar, their events are in their calendar, but what they don't put in the calendar is the work they have to do. So I'm going to use this as a really good example. 3 years ago, we realized at our store that we needed a new training manual slash operations manual. So we actually changed the name from training because people who worked for us a long time aren't going to go back to a training manual. And we changed it to an operational manual. And what I realized is this was, first of all, I had to sit down and figure out how long this was going to take us. It's every function our store does in a WordPress manual. And so I sat down, and the first thing I did was sort of figure out how long it was going to take us to write this. It's not on the screen. I had no idea.
It's okay.
Okay. Well, should I talk while you do that? So this slide would have changed your lives. I just want you to know that.
I think she's talking about a schedule and it's not.
Yeah. Did the other ones? Did nothing show?
Nothing.
So you didn't even get the safety message. I told it to us. It was a cell phone in a car while you were driving. That was the safety message. Okay, I'm going to keep talking. So time blocking is so I was talking about the operations manual. Thank you. So I realized how long this was going to take me to do. And one of the most important things on that one is I realized it was actually going to take us about a year to write this manual. And then I sat down and put in my calendar time to work on the operations manual. So two wonderful things happen when you do that. So you're scheduling time with yourself to get a project done. And I now do this with my staff a lot. Two things happen. One, you're seeing it in your calendar. So all week long, you know, Thursday at this time, you're going to be working on this. And what's wonderful about that is then you start thinking. So I found myself taking much more notes about this project ahead of it. Then, you actually make an appointment with yourself to do the work. The other thing is sometimes things are going to come up. You're going to have that help to the register or something, or you have to suddenly, Margaret Atwood calls, and you're like, yes, I will have lunch with you. You're not going to say, I'm working on that's never happened. But you're not going to say I'm working on operations manual. But when it's in your calendar, what you do is you move it. You move it to a new appointment. And that, to me, when I started discovering I was actually moving my appointments with myself in my calendar, that if that's the one takeaway, I think that's, as I said, that's what works best for me in all of this. I love all these people who keep coming up here. Yeah. And then I promise once, if it works, when it works. There'll be like applause. Yay. You're the best. Okay, so what I'm going to just quickly do is, just so you can see, because, I did work on this. And then that's that wow information. That's why I didn't get the wow on that one. Multitasking, juggling, that's the safety message. Okay. So these are just some examples, things I've talked about. My buyers department put on their calendars. These are tools that we've used in our stores. Our buyers will actually put in their Google calendars discount dates when promotions start. Of course, rep appointments. The managers, we were really bad at doing staff reviews, and I hear this is just bad at scheduling them. Somebody would be like, I've been with you a year and a half. It's like, really? We never checked in with you. So the managers, when somebody gets hired, they put in their 30-day, their 60-day, their 90-day. That goes into their calendars. One of the things we've gotten really good at is a holiday planning meeting. So right after Christmas, we have a meeting the week after, which is our first post-op. And then on that meeting, I put in the August meeting. And again, what's so amazing is everybody who's coming to those meetings sees this note and is just starting to think ahead of time of what to talk about. My marketing department has started putting in when a book tie-in comes out. Funny holidays, like Shetland Dog Terrier Day, and then community events that happen. And again, a lot of these are to get, my example was I need to get a project done and I put it in my calendar, but it's also these meetings that help you think about things. And I'm kind of a nerd on this. When we end a meeting at our store, we pick a date for the next meeting and we put it in our calendars right away. Otherwise, what happens, and I think this happens to everybody, is 3 weeks later you're saying, when are we meeting again about that? Or lots of times we say, we don't need to meet on this. This project is done. And that's really exciting. Just one moment of reprieve from my slides. I think this is so true. I'm not going to read it to you because I assume there are readers in the room. Oh, but I should probably read it for the videotaping, which is the key to time management is strict and disciplined adherence to a rigid schedule while remaining flexible enough to let anything happen at any time. So managing projects and interruptions, this was a big one for me. So I'm going to keep going back to this operations manual. And then after I did the operations manual, I actually wrote a manager's manual, because I think this happens in all of our stores. When you're a really, really good bookseller, you get promoted to be a manager of people. Right. And you get no skills and no training and no warning except please tell that person not to be on their phone while they're at the information counter. So our managers had just sort of said, you just get dropped into this job and could we get a manual? So that was a big job that I put into my calendar. Actually, I'm going to talk about the manager's manual. And I put it into my calendar and I time blocked. And what I had done is I think I was doing Sunday mornings at 11 a.m., which is just a quiet time for me. And I put it in my calendar to do. But then the interruptions happen. And how do you manage those? So this is it's called the Pomodoro technique. It was, they claim it was invented in Italy. And what this is, so you have this is one of those big projects. I want to write a new plan. I want to redesign the store. I want to figure out how to move sections around. And the technique is you set a timer for 25 minutes. And you have to commit to not being interrupted for those 25 minutes. And I'm going to talk about managing interruptions. So if you suddenly do get interrupted, look, I actually have this. If you get interrupted, like we have an open door policy at our stores, so somebody might come into my office and say, can I talk to you right now? And as a store owner, of course, the answer is always yes, or it used to be yes. Here's one of my favorite quotes that I got from a time management class is that every time you say yes to something, you are automatically saying no to something else. And that sticks in my brain a lot. So I have learned when somebody interrupts to ask the question, I usually say, here's what I'm working on right now. I will have a break in 10 minutes or in 15 minutes. Can this wait? Or should I stop and take this question now? And a couple things happen. Sometimes it is a crisis, like somebody has fallen in our store and is bleeding, and I need to go. Or usually I say, did you call 911 first? Or lots of times the persons will say, no. You know what? Actually, I can wait 15 minutes or I can wait 20 minutes or this can wait till tomorrow, which means they're not quitting. So that's a good one. Right. Cause every time somebody says, can I talk to you? I think they're quitting. But what is interesting is when you let that person know that you're working on something and could they think about it, they tend to come back very organized with their thoughts. So you're actually helping them organize too. So if you get interrupted, you ask that person if you can wait and you make a note. So I'm like a sticky note addict and I make a note who interrupted me. And so that not that they're in trouble, but so I can go find them and I don't forget about them. And then at 25 minutes, you're working on your project, you take a 5-minute break. The most important thing is not to check your emails at this moment because that will take you in a clear other direction. So really the smartest thing you could do is go for a walk. I don't do it, but go for a walk. This is when you use the restroom. This is when you breathe. This is when you refill your water. You do anything that is not work related. Then you go back and you do another 25 minutes. And basically you give yourself a check mark every time you've gotten through it. At the end of 4 of those sessions, you take a 20 to 30 minute break and you repeat from the beginning because it's hard to work on a project longer than 25 minutes. At that point, actually, you just start getting repeated and you start getting lost. And again, I have adapted this. So sometimes it's 15 minutes or sometimes 20 minutes, but this is if you were to go on the internet, you would find the Pomodoro technique, and this is pretty much taken from the internet. When I have followed it this way, I have been most effective. And I did use this technique for writing the manager's manual, and I couldn't believe how quickly I got this project done. And it was because I wanted to test the theory of this project. For me, we have open door policies, and what I had to learn is there's a lot of things I can do at the bookstore and get done. And there's a lot of things that I have to just request a work at home day or work at home. What is interesting is I have one store, my Tempe store has back offices, and I can be a lot more effective there. My Phoenix store, our offices are basically the information and registers. So we're working right on the sales floor when we're doing our work. And what I had to learn in the past year was I can do different projects at different times. So I'm really good at doing emails when I'm on the register, and I try to save it if I know I'm going to be on a register. I do want to talk about emails for 1 second. A lot of sessions you would go to on time management would say you should never wake up and look at your emails, because it will take you just on a jet stream away from you and your day and controlling your day. I think that's great, and if you can achieve it, that's great. As a late riser, sometimes I really have to look at emails because it's really late in New York already. So I also do think it's where you live and it's how you choose. I don't mind always waking up and looking at email from my bed on my phone, but I also know it's a bad thing to do. But that is the thing about email. So the other thing that's actually not in my slides at all, but I have found one of my other biggest tools for success is when I am working on a project, when I'm working on a schedule, when I'm working on a logistical plan for an event, I close all the other tabs that I have open. And that has made me far more effective, because when I get stuck on a sentence or when I get stuck, it is so easy to toggle over to a different email account or toggle over to the dailybeastentertainment.com. So other outcomes that happen is if you take a project that you're working on and you do the Pomodoro technique, even if it's just once in your life, you will learn about yourself how long it takes you to predict to do a project, and then you'll be able to know. So I did the operations manual that way, then I knew how long the manager's manual was going to take me. And that's where that 1 minute of planning really helps. If you go deep diving on some of this stuff, it's like giving yourself a course. You can then know how to apply it in the future. The other big thing is you learn that a lot of people can wait 25 minutes to talk to you. And then the other thing about this is it actually, as a life strategy, helps you say this is work time and this is playtime. You know, there's a lot of people who say I can never work at home because I start doing the laundry or start emptying the dishwasher. What I love about this technique, and I empty the dishwasher and I do my laundry at those 5 minutes. So that has made me really effective. I don't do it in the middle of my 25 minutes. So just tools for interruptions, because we all get interrupted. We all get help to the register. Sticky notes. Where are you in that project? I have a friend who has a rubber band on her wrist while she's working on that project. And then when she gets interrupted, she puts it on her other hand to remind her she's in the middle of the project. I don't know how it exactly reminds, but then she'll snap it and punish herself somehow to get back on the project. And, who are interrupted? You need to acknowledge who interrupts you. Just so you know how to go back to them, and then ask them when you can talk to them. And I do a lot of appointments with people who say, I need to talk to you. And I'll just say, oh, okay, what time's your lunch? Or what time, are you off the clock? And then what I love again is they tend to get really organized with their thoughts. And I do the same thing. I am sometimes one of the worst of walking around my store and saying to people, hey, can I talk to you about something right now? And I've gotten better at saying, what are you in the middle of? Can I talk to you about this? Most people tend to say, oh no, interrupt me right now. And I feel really guilty about that. So it's a strategy that has to be done on both sides. And then before I dive back into my work, I do a quick review of where I was, and that helps generate my brain to get right back on track. This one breaks my heart, but it's true. I looked it up on many, many sites. The mere presence of a smartphone on a table or near your workspace it impairs your functioning. So just the mere presence of the phone, whether it's on or not. As I said, not everybody's going to apply every tool. I don't apply every tool. So how to plan. So this is sort of an overview. A lot of these are just planning, project management tools that are out there. These are just different names. You have to find the ones that work for you or the ones that don't work for you. When we were opening our Phoenix store, I tried to use Asana, which is a planning technique tool. I really liked it. Every single one of my colleagues hated it and started ignoring their reminder messages. And this is like the founders of my bookstore. So I was like, no, you don't have to use it. But a lot of people really like these and they're really good for small projects. I personally have Google Sheets that I use for timelines. I'm addicted to timelines. And I don't know how well you can see that. I brought actually a timeline. I work with a nonprofit and we do this annual event called a Pie Social every year. And what I love about this event now is we're going into our 10th year. But we do a timeline from basically, I think, the event's always in October, so we start a timeline in August. And then this year, in our 10th year, we actually started our timeline in February. And we designate a timeline of when everything needs to happen, who's going to be responsible for what, and when somebody finishes a activity, it gets colored in. So there's a manager of the timeline. We do a lot of authorless events or bar events at our bookstore, and people are coming up with amazing ideas. Like one of my staff came up with an idea to do a teddy bear picnic. And so now when we do these type of events, they get a kit from me, and a blank timeline is one of the kits, so they can strategically plan out. It also helps their store manager know when to schedule them time to work on something, and it also helps the people who've done a lot of authorless events guide them on how much time you need to do something. So it's a way of managing somebody who's doing more of a freelance project. They also get a P&L outline of how to do a P&L for their event. So this also has helped. This was the one that when I was on a plane flying to New York, changed my life. So when we do really big events, and we do a lot of big events, we do timelines for the day. And this has been, and we do this for our New Year's Day sale. We do it a lot. But I'm sure this is something many, many, many of you do. But I created this because I just said, wow, if I have to fly off to New York again, nobody's going to know, because I was running these big events and offsites and it was new for us, but nobody's going to know where the books are or who their contact is or what time we should arrive. These have become what I find so interesting is my staff loves these, because it gives them a guide, it helps us think about the day, and this has become this incredible time saver, right? So it reminds you, for example, to grab the offsite kit and make sure all these things are in the offsite kit. How many times have you gone to an event and been like, oh my God, I left the cash box behind? I'm not saying it hasn't happened recently in my store, which is really embarrassing, because we had a timeline. But this is one of our best saving techniques for when we're doing big events or a big thing on a day. And then we have, if you can kind of see this, it's a Google sheet and all past events are on the bottom. So that allows us to go back and just see what worked, what didn't work, and we'll make notes on that. So a lot of times we don't know how long something takes us. And a couple years ago, I started doing audits of time. One, I did my own, how long things take me to do. I was doing a panel yesterday on how to sell to schools, and we actually did an audit of a school order to see how much payroll we were spending on school sales. But also, it helps us manage people and know where they're spending their time and help them to be more efficient. In the past, and it's amazing that this hasn't happened in decades since we've been doing this, but so many times people are like, I just can't get my work done. There's not enough time in a day. So the question is why don't they have enough time in a day? And, all these things that I'm mentioning aren't going to work for everybody, as I said. And if somebody has, ADD or ADHD, this isn't this isn't the catch-all thing that's going to solve it. But auditing the time is really amazing. And there's tons of books on this, and there's tons of things online on this, which is why I didn't have any handouts on this. But the person creates a grid, or you create it for them, which talks about all their projects. So this at the time, this was actually a couple years ago, and this was a person who manages our community events. And she was tracking, and they groan when you give this to them, and you're going to groan if you ever give it to yourself. And we were trying to do it for 30 days or 2 weeks. But essentially, I think you can see this here. You're tracking where you spend your time. And one of the things that was so much informative, especially about this person, was interruptions. And I don't know if it's on this one, but interruptions was really, there was like hours of the day clicked in that interruptions pile. And what we noticed with her, for example, is that every time she had a question or a phone call, she would call somebody else to get, hey, Brandon, can you tell me how to do this? Or can we book this on this date? So with her, we specifically said, she has the thing at our desk now that has like my name on it and other people's names on it. And when there's 5 questions for me under my name, then she can interrupt me. Right? But this is very specific to her personality. She, like all of us, really wants to check things off of her list and get them off her list. But the problem with checklists is we're all competing, right? So you might interrupt me because you want to get something off your checklist, but I have something on my checklist and you're taking that away from me. So that was a tool based on where she spends her time. So these time tracking tools are really good when you don't know how someone spends their day, but the truth is they don't know how they're spending their day either. Phone calls. This has helped this person say, this has actually helped all of us say, we might call each other because we all answer the phones in our stores, and we're also all cross-trained. I think we're down to, I think 98% of us are cross-trained. So everybody in my store rings registers. Everybody is on an info counter. But what we do is we time block with each other based on this and say, from 2 to 4, I can't be on phones. I will not answer the phones. I will not be on registers because I have to get this project done. And it has helped us all function more. You probably have questions about this, but I promise to come. Well, we'll take questions. Yes, I think so. Yes, slides are available. Yes, Daniel says yes. So at the end of when this person, and we've done this with most of our managers, but I've had younger staff do this on their own. You can do the pie chart, which you can do in Google Sheets or Excel, that just tells you where you're spending your time. And what's funny, this shows you how old this one is. Co-op. Thanks to publishers today, right? We are saving a lot of payroll around co-op. But and one thing I want to touch on here, something I hear a lot at conferences, and I used to say it, but I don't say it anymore, is it's easier to do it myself than to train somebody. It's much faster. It's not true. It's just not true. For, a simple thing or a crisis mode, yes, you need to do it yourself. But it's not easier, and it's not time saving if you don't train somebody else to do a lot of the work. It takes time to train. And then the other advantage is if I can train somebody on how to do some of the projects that I've had, I love having that second brain on that project, and they will also bring efficiencies to it because they're learning it for the first time. My favorite thing that my staff ever asked me is, why do we do it this way? And I swear to God, recently I was like, because in our old POS system, we had to do it that way. This person I don't even think was even born when we had our old POS system. So the to-do list. I have a really good friend. She's a political campaign manager. She hates to-do lists because she says they are a list of my failures. And she says she doesn't have one, and I don't believe her. And she says that anytime she has something to do, she time blocks it into her calendar. I don't find that all my to-dos award me the time to put it into my calendar. But I think everybody has to decide what to-do lists work for them. 2 years ago, it was the bullet journal. And I think a lot of people are using the bullet journal. That never worked for me. I didn't really have time to bullet journal. But I personally do a to-do list, and every 48 hours I copy it over. And that helps me prioritize the things that I need to do. And when I keep copying something over, I realize I might not get to it this year, and then I'll time block it for another year. And I hate to say it, but more and more I hear myself saying that's just going to have to be a 2019 project, or, well, now I get to say it's a 2020 project. But so to improve your own time management techniques, one of the most important steps you need to take is be aware of how you spend your time. Be aware of your interruptions. Do the charting for yourself. And I'm pretty sure there's apps for this now because there's apps for everything. And then plan how you spend your time. If you're working on projects, plan it. And then create and protect that focus time. And that is something that I know bookstore owners and managers never do. We never protect our own time. It's actually one of the best things we can do for our community and our peers is to protect our own time. I have a former employee who's working at this incredible nonprofit reading group that's just growing. And she said, I'm really good about putting projects because she was trying to propose a new program to her board. And she's like, I'm really good at actually putting the projects in my calendar, but I am so bad to myself. I constantly cancel my appointments with myself. And I was like, why are you the first person to treat yourself so badly? So I have to check in with her because she had an appointment with herself last week. So as you're working on things, this has helped me a lot, is what tasks can be batched together. And what that means is you don't want to just jump from project to project. That's very different. So if I'm doing an event logistic timesheet, and I really have recently passed this on to other people, but I'm a type, and I bet you we all are, where we have to get good at something first before we can train somebody else. So when I'm doing, let's say, a logistic for an offsite event, I will try to do, if I've got 5 events coming up, I will try to do them all at once because that is just far more efficient than doing one a day. Same thing with reviews. I mean, honestly, we probably can't do more than 2 or 3 a day. But we will try to at least batch 2 or 3 together in a day. What is your best work environment? You know, as I have learned, there's just some projects I have to do at home and I block that in my schedule and people know I'm at home. Some things I have certain projects. I've had days where I'm going to be in the Phoenix store, but I actually go to the Tempe store because I know I have to get a project done because that's where my desk is. And so what are your biggest distractions and what can you do to control your work environment? So again, you're going to be working in your stores and you're going to get interrupted by people. The most important thing you can do for yourself is to schedule on the time to move that to. Like, don't just say, oh, I couldn't get to this, but actually take the time to put it in your calendar. People will wait to talk to you. This is my goal in life. My goal is to just be very peaceful, to be able to meditate every day and make lots of money. So here's some things I've learned. As I said, I've done deep dives on research on this and, determine the priorities that you have to do every day. I try to do that every day. Do the biggest task first, the one that's going to take the most time, do it first, because otherwise you will likely never get to it in a day. Again, this is one where they really say never check emails first thing in the morning because you will no longer control your day. Every email will control your day. Speaking of emails, I think one of the worst things about emails, and we all do this, I do this constantly, is you get an email and you feel you have to answer it and then they answer it and then you answer it and you don't know how to break away. I've noticed a new techniques is once the emoji gets entered, that usually means it's the end of that chain. I like emojis, but I'm not a big fan of them in communication. I think I grew up like at an era in business school where you did full sentences and there were no emojis. But sometimes you just have to let that go and stop or, take a scan of that email. I assume a lot of you are on Google and they really have this new tool, where it'll push a message back to you or you can suspend a message or it can remind you that you haven't answered this in 5 years. I feel like I prayed for that and it came. So that has been really useful. Another thing we do for each other in my stores is, I have somebody who's just so brilliant and so creative and so disorganized. And I'm constantly sending him emails that say, I'm bumping this to the top of your inbox. And, it's great. He now just says, thanks. Thank you for the reminder. It frustrates me that I have to send reminders to myself to remind him that I have to remind him to bump up. And that's really annoying. And the other thing is he also doesn't realize that young staff are too afraid to bump something up to his inbox. And that's something that I think about. That's feedback that I've heard. But I have a more successful marketing department because I make the time to remind myself to bump something up to his inbox. It works. End of day planning. So here's one of my secrets in life is at the end of every day, I look in my draft folder box. It is amazing what ends up in your draft folder box. Because there are I thought I sent that email and I don't know why I didn't hear back from somebody, and there it is. This has not just saved me a lot of time, but it saved me more, say, anxiety, because I realize what's in there. And then, those angry emails that I wrote are in there, and then usually I can delete them by the end of the day and I don't need to send them. And then almost every night, or at least every other night, I always say, on Sunday nights, I'm going to check my schedule for the week so I know what I'm walking into. But what this has become is setting the time to make sure I look at my schedule every other week. So, I do it probably every night or every other night, where I just take that glance of the full week. And one of my favorite things lately is I've gotten very good at what does my week look like. And now I can actually start inserting things back in for my personal life. Because I do not have a good balance yet of work-life balance, but what I can say is I see the light in the tunnel, and it is better than it was before I started doing all of this. And in part because I'm scheduling things for myself, and it is amazing. If you put yoga into your calendar, not I hope to go to a 7:30 class tonight, but you actually put into your calendar and someone says, can I meet with you at 7:30? And you say, is this something we can talk about tomorrow? They say, if it's not in your calendar, you'll probably meet with them. But if it is, you might get much better at protecting your time. This is my life every day. That awkward moment when you're not sure if you actually have any free time or if you think you forgot everything. Every time I think I have free time, I'm positive I forgot something. And what I have to say is, as I said, I've been working on this probably for the past 2 years. And 2 years ago, I would have said to you, yes, I was forgetting something. I didn't have it on my to-do list. I didn't have it time blocked. But now that I've moved to a place where most of that stuff is, and nobody's perfect, most of my stuff is time blocked, that sometimes now I can actually look at this and say, oh, I actually can put in that yoga class. This is all aspirational. Or I can put in, I actually do some crafting. I can put that in, or I can put reading time in. And about a year ago, I started putting reading time into my schedule, because that had become a big challenge for me. So that's what I found is actually 2 years, I really wasn't forgetting anything because I got the muscle memory and I got the habit of knowing how to time manage better and plan. So a lot of this is time management. A lot of this is planning, but it's really giving yourself permission to book an appointment with yourself or a project that just helps you get it done. And as far as burnout, I have to say it's much better for me I use most of these tools, but not all these tools. But my life has I haven't had a panic. That was actually my one and only panic attack. So I was very lucky because they're scary. I have now, my mother is aging and I've already gotten that one call where I have to get on the plane and go. And I just felt I was leaving everything in a shape where it was going to be okay. It also got us as a store to a place where we started making sure that every task and job was duplicated. And that is, we're not done yet. It takes a long time. But even this year, we had a lot of turnover in our store this year. And, we sit there and we go, okay, that person just left, and what were all their tasks? What did they do? How many of you do that? So we just created this document, and I had no better name than this document, which is called Who Does What? And what I'm most astounded about in my new employees who never knew we didn't have this, they're like, this document is awesome. Because they're so busy being like, who does school donations? And they're afraid to call and ask. In this document, which is just a Google Doc, and you can Control F and find. And I had no idea how great this document is, and it really is a time management, because somebody says, I'm going to go on vacation for 10 days, and we Google F their name, and we know everything that's not going to get covered in those 10 days. Rather than 8 days in, we realize school donations have not been done, right? So but it was me getting to a place where I was able to have the time and say, how do I take us to the next level? And that's why, if I could just say, pick something of this, and I do think it will make your life better. Will it change it? Will you be 20 pounds thinner? Will you have all new charming friends that are rich? Maybe. I'll let you know. Okay. That went very quickly. But we do have time for questions if there are any. Or I can also go back to slides, or we can talk about Margaret Atwood and what it would be like to have lunch with her. Yes.
I'm Kyle from Interbank in Dallas. And when you were talking about the trap of email, I just want to say one thing that I have found about when I have to contact my people by email. There's no avoiding getting in there. But when I will go into a program other than the email program to write my messages. I'll open a document in Word and just write all the messages I have to do. And then when it's time for email, I copy and paste them in there, and I can send them all at one time. And I don't find myself trapped by what you were talking about, which is you send the message and they answer right away. You have to answer right away. And that kind of lets me get all of that work done. I've contacted all of those people. I can send the messages, and I'm not balled up in email.
I love that. That might end up in here. So I'm going to repeat it because I've been told to repeat this. So instead of going into emails to respond to people or to write a long response to people, but actually writing the response or writing the email in a Word or in a Google Doc where you're off email and you're actually writing on a different platform. And then you would copy and paste and go into email so that while you're writing that email, you're not seeing the new emails come in and you're not getting distracted. You're actually composing that thoughtfully at once. Yeah. Airplane mode on your phone. Yeah, that's a really good one too. That one freaks me out. It just does. But I have a lot of colleagues who do the airplane mode on their phone and find it really successful.
So do you time block for responding to emails?
Sometimes.
How do you handle responding to emails when you have to do it?
Great question. How do you time block responding to emails when you have to do it? So I have a really good friend, my friend who does political campaigns. She time blocks every day for 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the afternoon. And she will not look at emails any other time. And her candidates got nominated. That's what I want to say. She's trying to turn my state blue, so she's one of my favorite friends. I am not as good at that, but I have done it a lot, especially when I'm trying to have a day off. What I will do is that's a lie. I do look at emails, but what I will do is say I'm not going to look at emails till 11 o'clock, or I'm not going to look at it till 1, and I give myself a short time frame. And then I do a lot of writing an email. I do it, in draft format, and then I save it and come back to it because, we're always trying to, we're always trying to be perfect, and we're always trying to have that perfect grammar. I have a grammar nut in my office, and it is amazing how much longer it takes him to write an email than it does me. And, my subject line should be, look for typos. It's like finding Waldo. I'm sure there is one. But you can time block doing emails. You really can. I do think if you're an East Coast store or a West Coast store, that could be, you have to think about that time frame differently. I'm in a state that does not honor time saving, so I always have to remember whether we're 2 hours apart or 3 hours apart. But you can 100% time block emails. People don't always want you to respond right away. They really don't. I don't. So yes, at time blocking emails, it works for me. I don't do it every day.
I found that, when emails, when you're when all of a sudden you're having a conversation in emails in real time, if it goes back 1 or 2 times, I pick up the phone. Mm-hmm. I do that a lot. And I have somebody that works with me that thinks that email's the only way to communicate, and she just, I don't know what it is, because I'm older or whatever, yeah. I'm just used to the phone. And she'll say, no, just email her back. I'm going, no, this is insane. So I'll pick up the phone and just say, okay. And we talk for 3 minutes, and then the whole entire conversation is over. I won't let emails go back and forth in real time.
That's so true. So instead of doing the emails back and forth in real time, pick up that phone. Many people do never pick up the phone, but it's amazing how much you can get done on a quick phone call. I'm also a big fan, and there's a session later on other communication tools of the Slack or my bartenders. I've learned a lot from them because they don't have a computer at the bar. They just have POS systems. And they use WhatsApp, which is a lot like Slack. And it's very efficient. It's a very efficient tool for them to communicate, because I feel with email that CC just keeps growing in the BCC. And, but yeah, just pick up the phone and call somebody. And also please share. I mean, I don't think anybody's an expert at this. Just people with free time are excellent at time management. Share your greatest things that work.
In regards to the phone call thing, I agree that phone calls are really important. Also, it's nice to have that paper trail.
Yeah.
Refer back and say, wait, what did I actually say?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that said, it's nice to have an email trail instead of a phone call, but you can also send that summary. Here's what we talked about, and here's what we agreed to.
But my actual question to you was, how specific do you get with time blocking. Like you kind of put in like a vague, like I'm going to buy in this hour, or be specific and say I'm going to work on this order versus this off order versus like whatever. So how specific do you do the time blocking?
I get very specific. With what I'm going to work on when.
Exactly what task it is.
Exactly what task it is, because it also allows me to trade tasks in a more easier way.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine you can't be too rigid, because if you don't get done with that task, then all your other blocking's off. Correct?
Oh, so if I've time blocked an hour and I didn't finish it. Yeah, no. You're right. So you can't be too rigid with your blocking, but again, if you don't finish it, then you know to make another appointment with yourself. It's like having severe dental work and he didn't finish on that day, right? So you make that next appointment right away.
Block the Tempe so that you can rearrange.
Yeah. And then it might mean I'm moving my other blocks. I mean, if I don't put it in my calendar, I can't move it to another day. So that's where it's really important to have this. And here's the thing, it takes time. I mean, I tend to do a lot of this on Sundays, but it takes time to put all this stuff in your calendar. What I promise you, and I can say is proof to me, is how much time I've gained by putting all this stuff on my calendar versus walking in and saying, what was I going to work on today and how long is this going to take me? So I gain time by taking the time to block it into my calendar.
That's the time auditing comes in. You know how long it takes to do something. Don't
Yeah.
risk of running over your time blocking.
Yeah. The more you do it, the faster, the less planning you need, right? Because it's exactly that. If you know how, like, when I did the operations manual, it taught me how long it took to do something. And now when I go forward, I'm much better at my time blocking and I tend to get it right. Not always. But, I think writers probably do this with their novels where, it's just going to go on and you have to block that time.
Slightly changing the subject, but I was very intrigued by your P&L statement for your event. I wonder if you could talk briefly about that and if you do it for each event. And that's part of efficiency too.
Right. So P&Ls for events, is that something that I should talk outside or after, or does anybody else want to hear about that? Okay. So I'll just tell you really quickly, and also I'm happy to send you ours. I used to do them for a lot of my events, kind of all my author events, but I feel I don't need to. I've learned enough from my larger author events that I don't. I focus on them when I'm doing an author list event. What is my budget for if there's a crafting project? These tend to be a lot of kids events, or we're very lucky with our bar. We're moving into more bar events. It's an author list event with alcohol. So it's a P&L of what that person can spend on their crafting material, how much time they put into it. That's something that goes into the P&L. If we're selling tickets or not selling tickets, that's, we do an annual Harry Potter event. Again, having the bar helps a lot. We even have a local brewer who's now brewing butterbeer for us. It's amazing. It's very sweet. But that absolutely has a P&L to it because there's tickets, and that helps me a lot and helps me increase my budget for next year. When I do Teddy Bear Picnic, it was a free event, but what I did do in my P&L in part was look at my kids' sales for the hour after the event to see how much they were up. But it really helps mostly in how much time can that person spend, right? And I'm playing with a few things. I'm actually moving away from giving them in-store time to work on their author list events and instead having them work at home. Either they work at home on hourly, or we have some incredible crafters, especially in my Phoenix store, I look at it as if I were to pay a party planner, I might pay that person a fee for producing this party for me. And that goes into the P&L. And I can tell you, like, our Teddy Bear Picnic was profitable, I won't say highly, where we did a Halloween party where we absolutely lost money. And a year ago or 2 years ago, we are developing, because it's so imperfect, a professional development program for our internal staff. And it's professional development, not just in book selling. But I'm not going to keep them forever, but they can go out into the world. And what I learned was P&L is one of the ones they liked learning how to do the most, because they really felt they could take it out into the world. And the same thing with the timeline. And I have a little offsite event folder kit on Google that I would happily share with anyone. And this is what, if you come to me with an idea and say, I want to do an event on exit signs, I say, here's your kit. What does your P&L look like? And then they don't always know the answers to it. But I also think it helps them manage their time versus I was at home. I mean, somebody tried to charge me for, 4 hours of researching on Pinterest. This is why the Halloween event failed. They tried to charge me 4 hours of research on Pinterest to plan the Halloween party at their hourly rate. And that helped me write a better guideline of how we do authorless events.
Have you ever encountered how staff people who maybe think that it's too long, but their time is different? Like, how do you, what can you have a look at that, like what that follow-up conversation might sound like? You realize if there is something that's just taking somebody too long, or that person's not really working with you, perhaps in practice.
Yeah. What a great question that I would love a little more time to think about. We've had lots of conversations like this, and lots of times it's the wrong task for the wrong person. You know, that's a lot of the conversation. We all work differently. As I said, my person who's really good at grammar, he's moved more to an editing position. I mean, he does more editing than writing. I'll often write the first draft of things and send it to him, and it's amazing how much time we save. 10 minutes. Okay. I think it's really looking at that person and their style of working and what they're best at. We're big believers of the right seat on the bus. And I think that's part of it. I'd be happy to talk more, and I'm too afraid of being recorded and being like, she said what? To your staff. But that, I think, there's so many levels of learning abilities, and there's different things that we can do. And I have some great staff that can work on can work on projects while they're on registers, and I have some that absolutely cannot. And I cannot expect the same from everybody. But what I can do is learn how everybody works and thinks and try to give them tasks that best match that. Yeah. It's much harder with a smaller pool. It really is. Just like finding office time or letting people work at home is much smaller, because I'm fortunate where my Tempe staff and my Phoenix staff is small. And when somebody calls out, nobody gets office time. Nobody gets to work on their projects. And so a lot of these are harder. But what I have learned, it's that same thing, is sometimes we have to invest a little more payroll, a little more time in the small store to achieve more. And it's just that investment. So this is, you would like time management techniques, but you work with somebody who doesn't have any time management techniques. On his own time. Is this person equal? Higher up than you? Higher up than you? Okay, so it's this is a great question. My husband, by the way, so bad at time management and planning. So bad. He was like, when I told him I was doing this, he's like, I could never do that. And I was like, the room thanks you. So what happens when the people around you are not good at time management? You have to become a bit more of an enforcer and protect your own time, right? They're going to work on their time frame. That's their method. That's their creative way of doing things. And you have to own your time and block your own time. So when that person might say, hey, we're going to work on this in the hour, you have to say, hey, can we do this at 2:00 tomorrow instead? And here's why I need to do that. It tends to be they'll respect it. Like my office mate who's not great at time management, he respects when I say, here's what I'm going to do. And what I've noticed is he's adopting my techniques by osmosis. He's starting to see that I can finish. I'll leave work earlier than him on a lot of days, just because he's like, well, I just never finished the reply to this publicist. But he got interrupted over and over. He got excited. All of his email tabs are always open, and he's on Twitter, which is probably the worst thing you can do for time management, because and in my state, like Senator Flake does something and I lose him just down a rabbit hole for hours. So, I have had to say to him, you have to turn off Twitter to get, the grids done. But I'm in that position where I can say it to him. I think you have to lead by example would be my thing, and protect your time. Say, I can meet with you on this and I can talk to you about this, but here's when I can do it. Does that work for you?
Kind of a related question. How transparent is your day to your coworkers? Time blocking. And do they know, she's doing something right now, or do you wait to deflect?
That's such a great question. So how transparent is my time blocking to my peers and my staff, or is it deflecting? I lean towards deflecting. But I'm also gotten really good at, we have morning meetings in our store, and I'll say, I'm going to be working on this project from 11 to 12. I'm going to be unavailable at this time. I'm afraid of giving them my whole schedule. I'd be like, did you get that project done? But, probably making it more transparent would be a better idea. Somebody was just telling you about this program. I don't know if any of you use it I think it's called Schedulely, where it's an app that syncs with your calendar. It doesn't show your calendar, but it syncs with your calendar. And then if somebody wants to meet with you, they get to see when you're blocked or unblocked. And somebody was telling me I should be using this because somebody was like, can I have coffee with you? I guess you can just say, here's a link to my schedule, but it just shows them your open slots, and then they send a request and then you confirm it. So I just learned about this last week, and I'm going to look into it, and something like that could work with the staff. But again, it's so hard in our bookstores. I mean, my staff is 19 to 75, and everybody has a different when I need to talk to you. So I deflect a lot, and I'm honest, and lots of times it is I need to talk to you right now, and the answer is always yes. Let me just see how we are in time. Oh, so we have 5 minutes. Oh, I have not looked at that. I'm so sorry. You guys just need to shout out. I am so sorry.
What are your thoughts on texting or instant messaging?
What are my thoughts on texting or instant mess? Oh.
For business, it's kind of like that same interruption in person, but digitally.
Yeah, I can't control it, is what I've learned. So, for example, my kids' staff are all about Google messaging instant. And at one point I was very scared of it because I actually thought there was like bullying happening. Like I went to a dark place. I was like, you guys, you're excluding people. But it's very efficient for them. It's our kids' staff and it's very efficient for them. I'm not an instant message. It kind of freaks me out. So I think, again, we have such age diversity in our stores, and that's a challenge for management, but you have to allow them the tools that work. And the question is are they getting their work done? So again, my bartenders, we tried Google messaging. It didn't work. WhatsApp, unbelievable. And they have so many threads. They have so many different groups. So that works really great. Yeah.
I was going to say, if you use one of those apps that you mentioned, like you use Basecamp in my store, it's a way where everybody can use everything in one place. So people can talk to each other directly and message, but also use threads with teams. So you try to stick them on there. If it's not in one place and it doesn't, people don't have to also search all those different places. Right. The Google Messages is great, and then you let people put them on desktop computer, wait for Google Messages to come in or on their phone,
Yeah. So that's great. That's an advocacy for Basecamp, which is like an Asana, a Basecamp. These are these tools. And again, it brings everybody into that thread. And what I do, I agree so much with Christine. Everything's there. I don't know how many times you have done this, but I'm like searching for a message in my emails, and then I'll remember 40 minutes later that it was a text. And that's where you go find it. So those are those things about Asana and Basecamp is it's a great way to control an environment. I think for me, for me, what's challenging is I've got 70-year-old team members who are not, they just reject it. And they're my partners, so that's okay. Hi. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I won't repeat that.
Do you have a Bible document, like a document that everyone on your staff can access? I'm asking specifically event-driven, events and marketing driven, but basically that you have the name of the office, the published information, the title, the ISBN, the performance, how many copies, who's hosting the event,
Yes.
who's been considered, who's there in competition, how are we marketing, who is the partner.
Yes. So the question is do we have a tool at our store? And this is digging down deep on events and marketing. So if we're having an author event, do we have a tool or a platform where everybody can see how many books were ordered for that event? What are the signing guidelines for the event? Who's running that event? And our answer is yes. And this is another thing I'm really happy to share. And what I love about my answer to this is this was frontline driven. This is what they wanted. It wasn't, the marketing department just screwed this up, to be quite honest. So we have a template, which is once we book an author event, it's a template. And that template gets copy and pasted into the Google Calendar on that event. And they just recently, the frontline booksellers redesigned it. So what frontliners need to know about that event, you get a phone call, you're at the register, is at the top of that. What marketing needs to know is at the bottom of the page. So it is, I'm happy to share the template. It's been really successful for us, and it makes us better in the marketing department. So many, the staff teases us because, it'll be like we book an event and we write TK and, they'll be like, when are you going to fill that information in? But it's all there and it's made us very efficient and no phone, they're so rare. It's so rare that somebody calls, the person who booked the event and said, who's running this or who's hosting it or when are those books coming in? And because it's Google Calendar, the receiver can go in and note when the books came in. And especially in my Phoenix store, which is tiny, where we hid the books, which might be under a bench. And then I'll come back this way.
I think you addressed having multiple emails for being more efficient, or do you find that to be the case? Email account, or like pre-sorting your different streams of business, internal, external.
So address different emails for different parts of your business. Oh, personal address. So, certainly we have like consignment at changinghands.com because we tend to give consignment books to the person who hasn't yet complained about it, right? So it's easier to just have consignment at changinghandsbooks.com. We have an events at changinghands.com, which is really the self-published authors write to that email. But at the end of the day, we use our personal emails for most things. So I have been cut off. Thank you so much. Please evaluate it because this will help future seminars.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!